This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. With the return of Nick Chubb on the horizon, I think a lot of people are asking themselves, should the Browns tank? Can the Browns tank? I have mixed feelings about this whole thing. One, I'm never a fan of tanking. I talked about this before. It's going to be something I'm talking about a lot this week. I really don't like the cynical approach to football that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski has. I think it's gone too far, and I think it's having real consequences, right? And what I mean by the cynical approach that they have is it's just about what the result can achieve, and it doesn't really take into regard the emotional effects or the other kind of effects of doing what you're doing. And tanking is probably one of the most cynical damn things you can do. And for a franchise that has been super cynical over the last few years, I think tanking is crazy. Like, I get it. You want the number one overall pick. Maybe you think the Shedeur Sanders is the number one guy in the draft class and you feel like he's a franchise quarterback and you want the Browns to go get him. But also think about the consequences that tanking will have to the Browns locker room, and if that's going to drop Shedeur into a situation to be successful, even if you think that that's the guy that you want. We don't even know if that's the case right now with him, but even if you think that's the guy you want, or whoever the guy you want is, would that be the best environment to throw him into if the Browns basically throw away any semblance of a culture they've been trying to build here in order to get that guy? Then what's that guy going to become if there's nothing here to develop him? The answer is you're probably going to be disappointed. And this is why we keep ending up here. We keep wanting to take shortcuts in order to get the guy without concerning ourselves with what has to be sacrificed to get that guy. And if those things you have to sacrifice are going to allow that guy to be that guy. We got to start thinking about that. But think about other Browns fans who just want the goddamn team to win right now. And you can tell me and try to sell them a bill of goods about, oh, well, they're not going to win now, but they'll win in the future once they get Shedeur. These fans have heard that story about literally every quarterback we've went after. These people have waited. They want to win. This is a win now team, or at least it was supposed to be a win now team. And you keep asking people, oh, we should just lose. And then what's the effect that has on the locker room? What's the effect that has to any culture that you're trying to build? Because yes, the Browns stink right now. The culture is probably not super great in that locker room. But at the end of the day, it's still salvageable. It's not unsalvageable. You don't have people doing mass mutinies in the locker room. You don't have people calling for people's jobs in the press and shit. Like, the Browns locker room is not a mess right now. It's probably not the happiest place to be in the world, but it's not a mess. And honestly, a lot of locker rooms will be a mess right now with the Browns situation. So you at least have that. Yeah, getting the number one overall pick is good, but one, I don't think there's any prospect in this draft class that is so damn good you need to tank for. There's no Andrew Luck in this draft class. No matter what you think of Shedeur Sanders, even if you like him a lot, he's not that level of prospect. There's nobody who's that level of prospect in this draft class. So to me, there's nobody who is even worth considering tanking for, given what that effect is going to be on this team, who's already seen the cynicism of this front office take a load on this team when it comes to the Deshaun Watson trade, which is probably the most cynical move of them all. I don't think the Browns should double down on mentalities that have proven to be a mistake for them. They should probably just go out there in good faith and try to win a goddamn game. Nick Chubb, who knows how many years he has left as a Cleveland Brown? Who knows if he's going to play next year for the Browns? I would hate for Nick Chubb to come back, do all this work, and get told you can barely play because we're afraid you're going to be too good to win games, to lose games with. Can you imagine being Nick Chubb being told that? The Browns tell you we can't give you more than 5 carries this week because we're too afraid of you winning this game. You imagine the effects that's going to have on the rest of this team? Is Shedeur Sanders worth that to you? Or any player in this draft? Like, there's still a chance that you can just play this season out normal and get whoever you want in the draft. And hell, if you think that quarterback or a quarterback in this draft is so damn good that you got to go get him, then use some draft picks to go trade and get him. But you don't have to tank to get that player. I hate tanking. I hate entertaining conversations about tanking. I think tanking has been vastly overrated. It has not worked out as much as people think it has because we don't even evaluate it as a valid strategy. Like, it's not as good as people think it is. I don't like tanking. I'm not for tanking. I don't think the Browns should purposely lose or limit certain people's snaps to save them for next year. I think they should try to win as many games as possible because there's more things they need to preserve than just a draft pick this season. And also, I know the idea is going to be out there, oh, the Browns aren't that good. We should limit Nick Chubb's snap count because of that, and that's in an effort to tank as well. Or we should limit this player's snap count and save them for next year. But I would like to remind people that, like, the players on the Browns are not a piece of grocery store meat that you buy and throw in the freezer and then you pull out and you're like, oh yeah, it's all good. We threw it in the freezer. Just because these dudes don't play a ton doesn't mean they're not going to still age. I mean, Deshaun Watson's the greatest example of this. He looks like a dude who's about to be 30 out there playing quarterback, but he hasn't played that much football. You age even if you're not playing football. Sometimes we act like you don't age if you're not playing a ton of football, but you do. So saving this player by not playing them a ton is just wasting that player's time and career. That being said, let's have a second conversation about Kevin Stefanski. Do you trust Kevin Stefanski to develop a quarterback? Now, to some people, this is an obvious answer, right? And I think there's evidence for this being an obvious yes, because you look at what Kevin Stefanski has done with Jacoby Brissett, you're encouraged. You look at what Kevin Stefanski has done with guys like with Joe Flacco, and you're encouraged. Hell, even 2020, what he was able to get out of Baker Mayfield, you'd be impressed. So that's why I think a lot of people be like, yeah, I trust Kevin Stefanski. Here's the one thing I can't get out the back of my mind, because I do think that Kevin can develop a quarterback if he gets the kind of quarterback he wants. But here's the thing that just keeps yearning at the back of my mind. This is the second time the Browns offense has looked like this, specifically when they've made moves to get more out of a quarterback. So 2021, after 2020, Browns wanted to become more efficient. They wanted Baker Mayfield to show that he was a franchise level quarterback. They changed the offense to do that. Offense looks terrible. Now, honestly, a lot of that had to do with Baker Mayfield's injury and how he handled it and how he refused to get the surgery for it. Some of it was Baker Mayfield's decision-making, right? Like, Baker was always a hot and cold quarterback in Cleveland. Didn't work out. It wasn't as bad as the Watson stuff was, but it didn't work out. And then you get to Watson, and again, we're trying to cook up an offense around him, and it looks like horrible. And again, might just be that Watson's that bad. Would love to see it with some other quarterbacks so we can really evaluate that. But there is a question here of, like, is there a bit of Mark Jackson in Kevin Stefanski? For those of you who don't watch basketball, Mark Jackson was the coach who developed the Splash Brother Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, at the time Harrison Barnes, David Lee. Like, he developed them. But then Steve Kerr took that job and took him to the next level. There's a question of, when it comes to quarterbacks, is Kevin the guy to get a quarterback to the next level? We know that he can elevate the play of relatively mediocre quarterbacks. We've seen him do it with PJ Walker. We've seen him do it with Jacoby Brissett. We've seen him do it with the older Joe Flacco. Like, we've seen him get the most out of those style of quarterbacks. Even with a Kirk Cousins, he got a lot out of Kirk Cousins as well. But the question is, once you start trying to get a quarterback to go from really good in a system to being the system, can Kevin take that guy there? There's been 2 attempts. Those 2 attempts, for different reasons, admittedly, have not ended great for Kevin Stefanski. So that's something to monitor long term. Short term, what does Kevin Stefanski want at the quarterback position? What does Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski want at the quarterback position? I have no idea, truthfully, what they want. I know what they can work with, right? They can work with a Jacoby Brissett. They can work with a Case Keenum. They can work with a Joe Flacco. But what do they want from the quarterback position? Because when they've gone out to get a quarterback, they've gotten 2, Deshaun Watson and DTR. And those 2 aren't that similar to how Jacoby Brissett works, right? Like, those are 2 completely different types of quarterbacks. So what does this system want? What do they want for this system? I don't think they've provided a clear picture of that. Like, when I go through the draft and look at quarterbacks, I'm like, is Curtis Rourke somebody that they want? Are the Browns willing to work with somebody like a Cam Ward? Do they want somebody who's more about playing within the strengths of a system and throwing with anticipation like Jalen Milroe? Or do they want somebody who plays in a he's the system kind of style like a Shedeur Sanders? What is it that the Browns want from their quarterback position if it's going to be Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski making the decision for these next 2 guys, or these next guys who might be the Browns quarterbacks? Now, we got a whole long time to go through this, right? College football season hasn't ended yet. And that's one part of the evaluation. We haven't even gotten to Senior Bowl parts and all that. Like, we're going to have a lot of time to evaluate which specific quarterback you want. I would not put myself on a hill yet for a specific quarterback, because you're just going to end up rooting and dunking on guys every week for if they win or lose that week, or if they look good or bad that week. We got to let the season play out when it comes to these prospects, right? Because you're looking at the process, not the results for these prospects. So we're far away from like breaking down and looking at these draft prospects and making a decision on who's the guy, who's not. I feel like we're just kind of trying to get to that point early, because it provides us some hope with the Browns to think that there's another quarterback out there that they can go get that can save this situation while being on a rookie deal. What we do know is that there's none of those generational type prospects in this draft class, because those are guys that you know about pretty much from their freshman year, right? Like, what, Dylan Raiola is going to be one of those guys. You know about him right now as a freshman. Same thing with Jeremiah Smith. Same thing with Ryan Williams. Like, same thing with not Cooper Manning. I keep calling him Cooper Manning. That's his dad. But Arch Manning, right? Like, these are guys that you know they're going to go number 1, number 2 overall in their draft class years ahead of time. Nobody is there in this draft class. There's nobody who fits that description in this draft class, right? Myles Garrett's another example, somebody you knew immediately was going to be like the number 1 overall pick of their draft class. There is no such person in this draft class. That's why I don't think tanking makes a ton of sense, because it only makes sense when there's a generational person at the head of that draft class. There's not a generational prospect there, no matter how highly you think of any of these quarterbacks. I can't say that I think they're generational. And let me clarify here, just because somebody's not a generational prospect does not mean they can't be a good quarterback. Plenty of quarterbacks have been good without being a generational prospect. But it does mean that the hit rate for that quarterback, or the hit rate for getting a quarterback in a draft class where there is no prospect that has been known as the top QB prospect for like multiple years and was like a presumptive number one overall pick. Your hit rate for that is much lower, if that makes sense to you, right? I'm comparing prospect levels, not potential levels, and what that means for a presumptive hit rate, at least if we're talking about as a prospect again. But that's my thoughts on this. That's my thoughts. Those are my concerns about the Browns going forward. And I think some questions I think we need to evaluate going forward about, as much as we like what Stefanski and Barry have done, if the description is to get a new quarterback and develop him, what does that even look like for those two? And how far should we trust those two with that? That's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace. Offense, despite the fact that the quarterback wasn't executing early, still played really hard. Pierre Strong ran his ass off. Took a ton of hits. Came back in the game. Took more hits. Same thing with Deontay Foreman. I thought this team played hard. They didn't play clean, but they played hard as hell. Like, I was watching this game and I thought to myself, wow, it seems like the team has some players that want to win today. Like, they kind of found a way to dig themselves out of whatever rut they were in, and they started to try to play hard. Again, playing hard doesn't mean play well, but they played hard. And you still have the locker room if you're Kevin. But if you keep doing things like this, they're not going to trust you anymore. They're not going to trust the organization. They're not going to trust you as a coach. They're not going to trust Andrew Barry as a general manager. And I think this is a mistake that they keep making over and over and over again. That's my big concern from all of this. Are the Browns in their approach too cynical? And is that cynicism something that's going to bite them in the ass in the long run? I don't know the answer to that because I can't tell the future, but I don't feel good about it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.